14 after 8 o'clock, news and views on Salam Media. Welcome to the show. I do hope you're going to keep me company right up until 10 o'clock this morning. We start off once again with a bad news story, and we said to inform you that 5 people have been injured in the Egoli Gas truck fire in Braamfontein yesterday. Johannesburg Emergency Services says that these people were taken to hospital after an Egoli gas truck and an adjacent commercial building caught fire in Braamfontein yesterday afternoon. Let's get more on that story with Nthatisi Modingoane from the City of Johannesburg Media. Morning. Welcome to the program, Nthatisi.
Good morning, Julia, and good morning to the listeners and the viewers.
I should imagine you guys were pretty nervous when the story broke because you guys are based in Braamfontein as well. Am I correct? So there must have
Yes,
been a lot of
it's just a
carry
few
on.
blocks away from where we are, and I had to run out and dash to the scene quickly just to check what's happening. And
Okay.
what we found there is that there was a problem with a Egoli gas pipeline, which exploded and caused that fire.
Okay. I know that you're not a structural engineer or any such specialist. You are really in the media. But
Mm.
I'm kind of wondering, does that perhaps suggest that there's a problem with the gas pipelines underground in Johannesburg, very especially in light of what happened a couple of weeks ago in the Bree Street precinct?
You must remember what we said, Julie, with the incident that happened at Bree Street. We said one of the things that we identified is that the tunnels, they were not built for the city of this magnitude. They were smaller, actually. If you look at Bree Street in terms of history, most of those tunnels were in the pavement area, and now because the road had to be expanded because of increased population, they find themselves smack bang in the middle of the road. So one of the things that we want to do with the reconstruction of the pre-street is to look at the redesigning of all the tunnels in the CBD of Johannesburg so that they comply with international standards, so that we don't have to deal with these issues. But having said that, we need to also engage with other service providers that are having services that are running underneath our ground or our tunnel, so that they work with us and put investment as well, so that our redesigns going forward are sustainable and are able to withstand the pressures that the city is experiencing currently.
Let's just stick with the Bree Street story for now, and then we'll move on to Braamfontein and
Mm,
the gas explosion there. When we look at the Bree
mm,
Street story, that came hot on the heels of the Zama Zama story in the township of Riverlea. And there were
mm,
suggestions at the time that perhaps it's because of the Zama Zama illegal activity underground in disused mine shafts that might be. Possibly not maybe the entire root of the problem, but part of the problem that we're seeing, that we had that Bree Street situation. How do you view that? Is that totally two totally different issues altogether, and the Zamazamas don't have an impact at all in downtown Johannesburg?
Our report that was presented to the city by the experts doesn't even make linkages that would suggest those activities might have an impact. However, because we are still doing the redesign, because you might find that it's an issue that happened upstream and moved across into into the CBD. So as we do the work, because now this week, for example, we are getting the service provider in to start with the construction work so that they go in and make sure that every trace is done and the designs are also done, and we are able to conclusively determine some of the challenges and rule out some of the speculations, because for us, the report just concluded that it's a methane gas that built up underneath the ground. The source of the
Okay,
methane
so
gas cannot be determined.
mm,
Yeah, at this
so
stage. So there's a whole lot of work
I
that still have to happen.
all right.
Julie?
I'm wondering about the situation. I have promised to go and have take a drive through on a Sunday morning or afternoon when it's not busy in that part of town, just to go and see what it
Mm.
looks like, because that's where I was born. I was born and I grew up in the central in the CBD, so those areas are very
Okay,
close to my heart.
I
But
can imagine.
be that as it
I can,
may, has that entire area been cordoned off the Bree Street precinct? And what about the people living there? Are they still safe to be in the area once the construction or the rebuilding starts happening? The repairs to the underground tunnels and pipelines.
yes, what is happening is that after the work was done by structural engineers and all the experts that have the know-how of these issues, we had decided on an area that has to be cordoned off. However, it doesn't block off the pavement entirely, so that people gain access to the buildings that they live in, and the buildings were checked structurally to make sure that they are safe. So that portion of the street will become a construction site, which will be cordoned off, so that people cannot have access to that vicinity.
How soon will work, how soon will work start in that area? Because obviously people are jittery, and the sooner the work starts, we will be reassured that something's happening, and eventually it will be safe to traverse on those roads and those streets.
Yes, Julie, we want to do the work as soon as possible. Hence, I was saying the service provider is coming on board this week, and we're hoping that in the next 2 to 3 weeks we will start seeing TLBs and trucks moving into the space to start removing the rubble and working in that space. So we understand the frustrations because of the delays, because when you're dealing with the public pairs, at times you need to follow proper supply chain processes when you appoint, so that you are not found wanting at the later stage by the Auditor General to having spent the public purse in a very incorrect way. So we tried to make sure that we stick within the supply chain processes that we have, and we are happy that we are starting to see movement in that space, that the service providers are coming in, and we will start to see action in that precinct.
In a situation like this, with most towns and cities, they don't budget for such disasters. And I was almost half afraid that the city of Johannesburg would suggest there isn't budget, a contingency of sorts to fix the Bree Street precinct. What's the situation? Is there some sort of a contingency fund, or is Treasury or some power somewhere along the line making the monies available for the repairs to happen and to stabilize that area of the city?
Your sound. I seem to be losing your sound a bit. I missed that question. I missed some parts of that question that you posed now.
Budgetary constraints,
I think our
money for repairing that street and that precinct.
yes, the city has got its own financial reserves to be able
Ah,
to do some work. However, we had also, through the intergovernmental relations, engaged the province as the other sphere of government to come in and help us. But you remember what we did? We submitted an application of the area to be declared an area of local disaster so that we can unlock some disaster relief funds elsewhere in other spheres of government.
okay, wonderful. We look forward to that. We will be talking with you on an ongoing basis for progress reports regarding the Bree Street precinct, because
Yes,
obviously we want Johannesburg to reclaim,
to work.
its title of being a world-class city. Let's move on then and talk about another very important issue is the Albert Street, the building that was, caught fire last week in Albert Street and the disaster that played out there. When the Bree Street situation happened, the city council did indicate that they're going to try and inspect all of the buildings in due course to check that the buildings are safe. Would that only have been from a structural perspective? Because obviously the Albert Street tragedy is a totally different situation. It had nothing to do with the structure, it had something to do with slumlords having rented out the
Mm,
place, and filled
mm.
it to capacity with people, and that was a disaster waiting to happen. How are the two
Yes,
situations different?
it's it's a very complicated scenario and case that you are dealing with here, Julie. Let me just paint a picture and give you a scenario of the challenges that we have. We have a department which we call GIFIS, the Group in Investigation and Forensic Services in the city of Johannesburg. One of their tasks and functions is to investigate cases of building hijackings and work with South African Police Services and other agencies to try and reinstate those buildings to their rightful owners or properties. When you look at their dashboard register, they are dealing with about 188 cases of hijacking of property. When we talk about hijacking of property, we're not only talking about buildings. There is also a private houses are being hijacked. I
Wow.
remember
Sure.
one of the cases. One gentleman went to a holiday with his family. On his return, the house was hijacked. Couldn't gain access to his
Sure.
own property. So it's a whole lot of it's a syndicate of some kind that would require a really coordinated effort to be able to break through. It's just like the Zamazama syndicate. It's massive. There are gangs there with weaponry who are intimidating people, who are intimidating the inspectors that when they come to inspect the buildings and so forth. So it needs a very multitask task team to be able to deal with it. However, in the work that the GFS has been doing, so far, they have managed to successfully reclaim 66 of the 188 buildings
Wow.
that had been reported to them and reinstated them to their rightful owners. We are making progress, but the progress might not be seen to be as fast as it should be. But we're hoping that with the help of other law enforcement agencies, we will be able to speed up some of these things. I understand that the the government has also established a commission of inquiry to look into especially the Albert Street incident, and I'm hoping that The recommendation from that commission, once it concludes its work, will help us to beef up in terms of resources to try and fight this challenge of hijacking of property in the city of Johannesburg.
Okay, let's move on then to Braamfontein and the events that unfolded late yesterday afternoon, where 5 people were injured. They've been hospitalized. And of course, the talk is that the cause of the fire is still unclear. But how safe is that precinct for the people that live and work around that area? What do you know about it?
Yesterday, I went on site, um, and then I observed what has happened, and what I can report to your viewers is that there's a section of the building at the corner of Betha and Tigorte that caught fire on the first shop. There's a small shop at the corner there, and there was also a truck that belongs to Egoli Gas that was standing there, which caught fire. The damages are not as extensive, but the property underneath the small shop, I remember I used to cross there. There was a small business person doing their own business there, and I imagine now they don't have any source of income because their little shop has been damaged. The fire was coming from the corner next to a robot, because it also banned some of our infrastructure in terms of robots. And then what has happened is that Egoli Gas team came in and isolated their gas pipe, and then started working on repairs and maintenance. By the look of things, when I left there in the evening yesterday, Betha Street had been opened. Only the court had been closed. This morning I checked again, and the court is opened, but there's still work that is happening on the site, because most of the damage is on the site. So the guys from our emergency services have assured us that it's safe to drive around there while the work is still happening. So we will monitor if there's any caution that needs to be given to the general public. We will do so.
Let me just understand this clearly. Um, did the fire happen beneath the shop before the Egoli gas truck arrived there? Or was it whilst the Egoli gas employees were doing some maintenance work that the fire erupted?
That's what we want to establish as well.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
and equally gets his mom on those issues, because they issued their own statement, but it doesn't clarify whether it was a routine maintenance process that went wrong. But in their statement, they say one of their pipe exploded and
Oh,
caused the
okay.
fire. And and for us, it's very important that we close that gap so that we understand whether it was an accident that happened while we try maintenance, or whether it's something that happened and they tried to come in and their fire got their truck got stuck there next to where the fire was coming, because the fire was coming underneath, under the ground.
Okay, so we hope it's not due to negligence, but undoubtedly there will be an investigation. Before I let you go, have you had any update on the 5 people that were injured? Injured, are they okay? Were any of the injuries very serious, or hopefully are the people going to be discharged shortly?
Our emergency services team indicated to me that the injuries were minor, and they didn't expect those patients to be in hospital for a long time. I haven't had time to go and verify and check if they were discharged, and that I will do after this interview. And then if there's a need to come back, maybe tomorrow we can come back and give updates.
Thank you. We do appreciate it. Nthatisi, City of Johannesburg Media, always a pleasure talking to you. And all I can say is you've given me a bit of good news this morning, suggesting that work is going to be starting soon on the Bree Street precinct. The fact that 66 hijacked buildings have been reclaimed by the City of Johannesburg, not as many as we'd like, but the fact is it is indicating to the general public that COJ is trying their level best to try and rehabilitate, to reclaim and do what is right for what was once known as the City of Gold and soon to be back there, the City of Gold, a city of world class standards. So we look forward to that. Thank you indeed. Go well.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
It is exactly an 8:34 a.m. News and views on Salam Media. In a minute or two, we'll be talking with Francois Rousseau regarding the Black Sea grain deal.